What happens when those sworn to uphold the law twist it into a weapon? These aren't just rogue officers. They're women in uniform who orchestrated murders, betrayed the system, and sold out justice from the inside. From cold-blooded executions to silent setups behind prison walls, this is the definitive list of corrupt female cops sentenced to life in prison, and those who shocked the world with lesser terms. Stay with us to uncover every twisted detail and decide for yourself who truly deserved freedom. Officer Antoinette Frank. Antoinette Frank's betrayal is perhaps the most heinous of them all, a cop who turned her service weapon on her fellow officer and innocent civilians. In March 1995, then 24-year-old Frank and her boyfriend, drug dealer Rogers Lacaze, stormed into Kim Ann Restaurant in New Orleans. Antoinette, once trusted to guard the establishment off duty, had stolen a key. That night, she used it to unlock death. Her colleague, Officer Ronald Williams, was on duty that night when Frank entered and distracted him. Lacaze shot Williams in the neck. As he collapsed, Lacaze fired again, killing him instantly. Then Frank turned on the Vu family, the restaurant's Vietnamese-American owners. She pistol-whipped 17-year-old Quang Vu before executing him and his sister Hao, all for a stash of money hidden in a microwave. 2 family members who hid in a cooler survived the massacre. One of them ran for help. Astonishingly, Frank returned to the scene in a borrowed patrol car, pretending to be a responding officer. Her charade crumbled when the surviving witness pointed her out to real officers. During interrogation, Frank confessed, implicating Lacaze. Prosecutors claimed the motive was revenge. She believed Williams cheated her out of work hours. She became the first female officer in New Orleans history charged with killing a fellow cop. In trial, 39 defense witnesses were listed, but none testified. The jury took just 22 minutes to convict her, a record for a capital case. She was sentenced to death in October 1995 and remains on Louisiana's death row. Her clemency appeal was denied in 2023. Now 53, Frank continues to fight for her life through appeals. But justice has left no door open. Officer Erin Sharma. She didn't pull the trigger or wield the weapon, but she orchestrated a murder from the control room of a federal prison. Erin Sharma, a federal corrections officer at the Coleman Federal Correctional Complex in Florida, turned her authority into a tool of vengeance, and in doing so, sentenced an inmate to a brutal death. Cold, calculated, and carried out through bureaucracy, it was one of the most chilling abuses of power in modern prison history. The story begins with Richard Delano, an inmate known for having a big mouth, a tendency to talk back, and a knack for stirring up tension. He wasn't violent, but he wasn't quiet either. And one day, that cost him everything. Officer Sharma, frustrated by Delano's perceived disrespect and constant complaints, decided to get rid of him in the most sinister way imaginable, by placing him in the path of a known predator. In July 2005, Sharma collaborated with fellow officer Michael Kennedy to transfer Delano into the cell of Sean Kuya, a notoriously violent inmate with a history of assaults. Kuya had previously beaten another prisoner so badly that he required emergency medical intervention. Everyone in the facility knew his reputation. It wasn't a matter of if he would strike, it was when. Sharma not only arranged the transfer, she taunted Delano in the days leading up to it. In one exchange, she reportedly told him, "You like to play games, don't you? You want to be a big man? Let's see how you do now." Delano protested the move, fearing for his life. Other staff members expressed concern, but Sharma was unrelenting. Within hours of the transfer, Delano was dead, beaten so savagely that he never stood a chance. The case would become a test of justice. Could a corrections officer be held responsible for a murder they didn't physically commit? The answer came in 2009 when federal prosecutors charged Sharma with deprivation of rights under color of law resulting in death and conspiracy to deprive rights. The courtroom was filled with graphic testimony about how Sharma used her uniform as a weapon, not by physical force, but through the quiet power of inmate control. Her defense argued she was scapegoated, that she couldn't have predicted Kuya's actions. But the jury saw through it. This was not negligence. This was a setup. A life traded through a form, a keystroke, and a locked door. Sharma was convicted on both counts. She was sentenced to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Unlike other inmates, she now lives behind the very walls she once commanded, stripped of the badge she used to kill by proxy. As of 2025, Erin Sharma remains incarcerated in a high-security federal prison, one of the rare female officers in U.S. history to receive a life sentence for orchestrating an inmate's death. Her story serves as a harrowing reminder that some of the deadliest weapons in law enforcement don't come in the form of guns, but in unchecked power, sealed doors, and a cruel decision made behind a desk. Officer Ashley MacArthur. Ashley MacArthur once worked on the side of justice, a crime scene technician trusted to collect evidence and protect the truth. But behind her professional veneer was a web of deception that led to one of Florida's most chilling betrayals. In September 2017, her friend Taylor Wright, a private investigator and former police officer, vanished without a trace. What started as a day out between friends ended in cold-blooded murder. Taylor had been going through a difficult divorce and had trusted Ashley to safeguard $34,000 she had withdrawn from a shared marital account. That money, as it turned out, would become the motive for murder. The two met up under the pretense of horseback riding on Ashley's family farm. That would be the last time Taylor was seen alive. Concerned, her girlfriend, Cassandra Waller, reached out to Ashley, who casually brushed it off, claiming Taylor just needed space. But days passed, and a chilling suspicion grew. Investigators focused on Ashley, who told them Taylor had left in an Uber. However, surveillance soon revealed Ashley purchasing concrete and potting soil. Phone data placed her at the very location Taylor disappeared, the family farm. When police searched the grounds, they unearthed Taylor Wright's body buried under concrete and potting soil, with a single bullet wound to the back of the head. Ashley had not only killed her friend, but also used her phone to send fake texts to make it seem like Taylor was alive. The coldness of her crime shocked even veteran investigators. During trial, the defense claimed there was no physical evidence tying Ashley to the murder. But the jury wasn't convinced. On August 30th, 2019, she was found guilty of first-degree premeditated murder and sentenced to life in prison with a mandatory 25-year minimum. As of 2025, Ashley MacArthur remains behind bars in Ocala, Florida, with parole not possible before 2044. She will be 67 years old. Officer Stephanie Lazarus. Stephanie Lazarus wasn't just any cop. She was a decorated detective in the elite art theft unit of the LAPD, educated, respected, and seemingly stable. But inside, she was boiling with resentment and jealousy. In 1986, her college ex-boyfriend, John Rutan, had moved on and married a young nurse named Sherry Rasmussen. And Stephanie, unable to accept that chapter closing, plotted one of the most calculating revenge murders in LAPD history. On the morning of February 24, 1986, John left for work, and Sherry stayed home, unaware that her killer was approaching. That afternoon, she was found brutally beaten and shot 3 times. Bite marks and signs of a staged burglary painted a misleading crime scene. But with no solid leads, the case went cold for over 2 decades. In 2009, with advances in DNA, detectives tested a bite mark swab and found female DNA. Suspicion turned to Lazarus, who had never been formally investigated. Undercover officers retrieved a discarded cup, confirming the DNA match. Stephanie was arrested at LAPD headquarters, and her trial began in 2012. The prosecution revealed a bitter woman obsessed with her ex and enraged by his marriage. The defense argued mishandled evidence and circumstantial links. But it was clear Lazarus used her training to mask the crime, hoping her badge would shield her from suspicion. The jury disagreed. She was sentenced to 27 years to life in prison. Her parole bid was denied in 2024 after Sherry's family described the devastating loss and Lazarus's lack of remorse. As of 2025, she remains incarcerated in Chino, California, over 16 years into her sentence. Officer Elfrida Fluker, 15 years of decorated service, countless arrests, a reputation for bravery. But for Officer Elfrida Janipil Fluker, none of that mattered on the night love turned into a deadly obsession. She was more than just a cop. She was a member of Birmingham PD's elite crime reduction team, known for her fierce work ethic. But behind the badge, Fluker's heart was unraveling. For years, she had been romantically involved with her fellow officer and partner, Mario White. They lived together, shared a home, and built a relationship that blurred the lines between personal and professional. But Elfrida suspected Mario of cheating, and in April 2020, her worst fears were confirmed. Using a phone tracking app, she followed him to Germania Park, where he sat in a police vehicle with another woman, 43-year-old Kanesha Nicole Fuller. Fluker drove to the scene, walked up to the car, and opened fire. Over 15 rounds tore through the passenger side, hitting Kanesha in the head, arm, and leg. She died in Mario's arms. White, shockingly, was left unharmed. Instead of calling for help, Mario drove around in a panic. Fluker briefly joined him in the vehicle, then fled. Hours later, White called 911 and lied, claiming unidentified men carried out the hit. But the investigation quickly turned inward. Witnesses had seen Fluker arguing with Mario at the park. Surveillance footage and ballistic evidence told the rest of the story. She was arrested at her mother's home the next morning. Prosecutors charged her with capital murder and attempted murder. During the trial, her defense painted her as a woman broken by betrayal, claiming she acted in the heat of passion. But the prosecution didn't buy it. This wasn't a snap decision. It was an execution by a trained officer who emptied her service weapon out of rage. The jury took less than an hour, guilty on all counts. On February 6, 2023, Elfrida Fluker was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As of 2025, she has served just over 2 years of her sentence in an Alabama state prison. Once praised for her strength in uniform, Fluker now spends her days in silence behind bars. A stark fall from grace for a cop who became the very monster she once fought to stop. Officer Sophie Ems. Sophie Ems didn't need a gun to destroy lives, just puzzle books and betrayal. The 29-year-old British prison officer fell into darkness, not with bloodshed, but with deception. Working in a correctional facility in the UK, Sophie began a romantic relationship with a 42-year-old inmate named Jediah Clark. And it wasn't long before that romance turned criminal. Clark was already serving time, but he wasn't idle. With the help of his 61-year-old mother, Joy Wickham, and Ems, he began an operation smuggling synthetic drugs into the prison, not in bottles or bags, but soaked into the pages of innocent-looking word search books. Ems brought the books in, claiming they were for inmate rehabilitation. But inside was a synthetic cannabinoid known as spice, a dangerous zombie drug that caused seizures, psychosis, and death. She was paid £7,000 for her role, while the operation grossed over £130,000 in profit. But their empire began to crumble in 2024 when the Eastern Region Special Operations Unit picked up the scent. Undercover surveillance, intercepted communications, and forensic drug testing all pointed toward the puzzle pages. Sophie was arrested and confessed, her life as an officer collapsing in the shadow of greed and manipulation. At her trial in December 2024, Judge Catherine Moore called it a gross breach of trust. She was sentenced to 2 years and 11 months in prison, a punishment many deemed light for such a coordinated betrayal. As of April 2025, Sophie Ems has served about 4 months of her sentence. She will likely walk free by 2027. But the lives she endangered, both inside prison walls and out, will never forget that a smiling officer once smuggled poison between the lines of a crossword. Officer Natalie Mottram. The fall of Natalie Mottram wasn't about bullets or brutality, it was about secrets. And one secret nearly blew up the largest organized crime operation in UK history. At just 24 years old, Mottram held a position of immense trust. As an intelligence analyst with Cheshire Constabulary, she had top-level access to Operation Venetic, a massive crackdown targeting gangs who used encrypted messaging apps like EncroChat to move guns, drugs, and money through Europe. She wasn't on the front lines, but she was the brain behind them, the one analyzing threats, building cases, feeding critical intelligence to command centers. And she leaked it. Mottram confided in Jonathan Kay, her friend's boyfriend, who was neck-deep in organized crime. She told him everything, that law enforcement had cracked EncroChat, that arrests were coming, and that messages were being intercepted. That leak spread like wildfire through the underworld. Mobsters deleted messages. Weapons vanished. Millions in dirty money slipped through the cracks. The National Crime Agency quickly realized what had happened. They tested her, feeding her a fabricated intelligence log about Kay. She immediately ran to him and spilled everything again. This time, they were ready. Mottram, Kay, and 2 others were arrested in June 2020. £200,000 in cash was found stashed in Kay's home. In court, prosecutors said her betrayal compromised dozens of cases and could have collapsed one of the most vital operations in British law enforcement history. She pleaded guilty in August 2023 to misconduct in public office and perverting justice. On November 3rd, she was sentenced to just 3 years and 9 months in prison. As of April 2025, she has served 17 months. She could be out before 30, but her name now lives in shame. The woman who nearly let Europe's worst criminals slip through the cracks because of one whispered secret. Officer Lorna Pennycook. Lorna Pennycook's betrayal wasn't loud. It was quiet, calculated, and incredibly dangerous. A 38-year-old constable from West Midlands Police, she didn't shoot anyone or smuggle drugs. But she sold something even more valuable, information. In 2016, she began dating a man named Kennedy, a charming figure with a long criminal record. What she didn't expect? That Kennedy had more than 18 convictions. But that didn't stop her. Over 5 years, Lorna used police computers to access confidential information, looking up warrants, tapping into intelligence logs, even monitoring police raids. And most disturbingly, she wasn't even assigned to the areas she snooped into. Why? Because Kennedy wanted to know. He had friends in trouble. He needed updates. And Lorna, blindly in love, delivered. They tried to hide it. Burner phones, deleted messages, careful planning. But in 2020, a tip-off led West Midlands Police to the truth. Lorna was under surveillance, and by 2021 she had resigned, but the investigation had already sealed her fate. In March 2023, she pleaded guilty to misconduct in public office. In October, she was sentenced to 4 years behind bars. Kennedy got the same. As of 2025, Lorna has only served 4 months. But she faces a lifetime of disgrace. Her access to police databases was meant to protect lives. Instead, she sold them for love, and became the very thing officers are trained to fight, a breach in the wall between justice and chaos. Officer Paula Atwood Reese. She once wore a badge. Now she's remembered for wielding a shovel and a cattle prod in a fit of suburban revenge. Paula Atwood Reese, 59, had served in South Wales Police before retiring with her wife to a seemingly quiet home in Monkswood. But that calm was shattered by years of petty neighbor disputes that eventually exploded into chaos and blood. The target of her rage? Christopher and Jacqueline Teague, a retired couple in their late 60s, who once shared fence lines and friendly waves with Paula. But the smiles faded, arguments grew, and when the Teagues reported Paula for damaging their vehicle, it triggered something dark inside her. On the same day she was convicted in court, Paula returned home, armed herself with knives, a shovel, a metal pole, and a cattle prod, and stormed their house. She kicked through their French doors and launched a savage assault. Jacqueline suffered a broken nose and deep wrist wounds. Christopher was stabbed and beaten. And as the couple tried to flee, she struck Jacqueline on the head with a shovel, only stopping when passing motorists tackled her to the ground. Even during arrest, Paula attacked an officer trying to cuff her. Her trial painted a grim picture, a former officer now driven by rage and bitterness, taking justice into her own hands. Her defense cited PTSD and a brain injury. But the court heard she had previous assault convictions on record, and this time, the judge had no leniency left to give. In October 2024, she was sentenced to 6 years and 2 months in prison, with parole possible after serving 2/3. As of 2025, she has served just over 6 months. But for the Teague family, the trauma runs far deeper. They were forced to leave the home they had lived in for 38 years. The badge that once symbolized safety became a weapon of terror in Paula Atwood Reese's hands. Officer Stephanie Heaps. Stephanie Heaps didn't just break the law, she married into it. At just 25 years old, this British prison officer crossed a line that few even dare to think about. While working at HMP Wymont, she became romantically involved with Leon Leighton Ramsden, a convicted murderer serving a life sentence for a brutal shooting outside a Bolton pub. Instead of reporting him, she fell for him. Deeply. By July 2019, Heaps had left the prison system and was serving as a police constable with Greater Manchester Police. But she never left Ramsden behind. Their relationship deepened, hidden from her colleagues, superiors, and law enforcement ethics. Not only did she continue visiting him in secret, but she also smuggled in illicit mobile phones, shared sensitive police intelligence, and shielded criminals connected to Ramsden's syndicate. On one occasion, she actively refused to arrest a domestic abuse suspect because of that individual's affiliation with Ramsden. She helped Ramsden run a criminal empire from inside his cell. Investigators were tipped off in 2019. Surveillance, phone taps, and social media trawls revealed the unbelievable. Ramsden and Heaps had even created an AI-generated wedding photo, flaunting their marriage online, mocking the very law she was sworn to uphold. In January 2020, Heaps was arrested. She remained silent through interrogation. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was systemic. She had protected a killer. Worse, she had empowered him. In July 2024, the courts finally held her accountable. She was sentenced to 4 years and 3 months in prison for misconduct and facilitating crime. As of April 2025, Heaps has served only 9 months. But her name is now a permanent scar on UK policing. The officer who married a killer and handed him the keys to crime from behind bars. From murder-for-hire plots to betrayal behind encrypted screens, these officers didn't just break the law, they shattered public trust. Their uniforms once stood for honor. Now they symbolize corruption. Like, comment, and subscribe for more dark stories the justice system couldn't keep buried. What do you think justice really looks like?